Hello and welcome to episode 57 of the Dynamo Football Book Club. This week we are doing Bobby Moore, a man in full.
That's broken for Giacchino. We've only got two defenders back. Round the ball and Bobby Moore. Now Mullery's coming. Giacchino going all the way alone and Moore stops it. What a player this fellow is.
My name is Alistair Bond and I'm joined by my co-host, a descendant of the Kings of Munster, Johnny Coughlin. Did I say that wrong?
Munster.
I know, Munster. Munter was a word we used to use for ugly people. Anyway, so, Johnny, how you doing?
I'm doing very well. How are you keeping?
Yep, very well, thank you, Johnny. So we're doing the hero of England's 1966 World Cup win, Johnny. What did you know about Bobby Moore?
Very little. You mentioned the thing about the bracelet. I'm not sure I even knew that. I knew he was a captain of the World Cup winning team in 1966. I knew that he played for West Ham and I knew he died of cancer as a young man. And I would say that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, Johnny, I don't know that much about him. I mean, you've often said to me, oh, you're brave boys of 66. But this is not my observation. But, you know, it doesn't really mean much to me, the World Cup win in 1966. It was not my observation. It was, I heard Josh Widdicombe say it, but it says nothing to me about my life, like Morrissey once said. It doesn't. It's like, I don't know, when people get all excited about England winning the 66 World Cup, it's like, oh, yeah, we beat the Spanish Armada, didn't we? Yeah, come on. It's just in the past. It's nothing to do with me. So he was just a figure about whom I didn't know much. Yeah, West Ham, England. Yeah, people loved him. That tackle against Pele. That's it, really.
For me, it's a bit like Ireland's many Eurovision Song Contest wins. They came before my time. Your Dana's, your Johnny Logan 1 and your Johnny Logan 2. It wasn't really till Charlie, even your Niamh Kavanagh's and that Linda Martin. It was only really when I got to Charlie McGettigan that did I have any memory.
Oh, yeah, Dana. That rings a bell.
Okay, it says nothing to me about my life. And what about now? Are you proud? Are you proud of Bobby Moore now that you've read about this? Do you like him more or do you like him less?
Ooh, I don't think I like him either way. Yeah, this is the thing about Bobby Moore. Pretty good at football. And I'm saying that, Johnny. Pretty good at football. But, like, this is a man with the depth of a fucking Rizzler paper. Like, there is nothing going on behind the eyes. Nothing at all. Decent enough at football. He is not a Mount Rushmore player. He is nowhere near the esteem he is held in British football. Like, no.
But he is the British or English football Mount Rushmore player, no? That's exactly what he is, no?
I think, yeah, if you ask people to say, put the greatest English player up on Mount Rushmore, always bloody Mount Rushmore, then yeah, people would say Bobby Moore. But really, the evidence does not suggest that. A couple of good tournaments. I don't know, man. I am so unconvinced about the legend of Bobby Moore now, frankly.
So here's a good expression. The Dianification. That was used in the preface. He's been Dianified to
Yeah, he's very much on a pedestal. And honestly, I mean, you know, you can't take the World Cup away from him. But beyond that, there's very, very little.
And I thought Matt Dickinson, the author of this book, did a good job. And he kind of sets it out in the preface that he wants to see the light and shade of the character, not the implausible messianic caricature that we've become familiar with. Gentleman of all time. That's how he was described as someone along a gentleman of all time.
Sometimes I worry this turns into the iconoclast football podcast, like where I'm just tearing down all these greats. But he didn't really lose his temper very much, and he didn't really have bad words for people. But a gentleman, no, not so much for me. No, not really.
He has the aesthetic of a gentleman, doesn't he? His crisp shirts, his suede suits, his leather company, his impossibly well kind of pressed clothes, his fastidiousness, I suppose, is what I'm getting to. And I thought this is really where the guy did a nice job. Moore is quite odd, isn't he? And by the way, Al, do you have any friends like that? Do you know people like that who you know but are really impossible to know? Because I do know a couple of people like that.
No, I don't know with Bobby Moore. I mean, no, I don't really, Johnny. I mean, yeah, what do you make of these people?
Well, that's it. I don't know if it's just me, but I find it hard to be in the company of people that without knowing where I stand with them. And I do know a couple of people who I've never known where I stood with them, and it makes me feel really uncomfortable. And that's what quite a few people said about Bobby Moore in this book, that they never really knew him. Like even Jeff Hurst, who played with him forever, and whose house he went to stay. No, his wife went to stay in during this whole bracelet thing when they were when they were away for the World Cup in 1970. Even Jeff Hurst said he never really knew Bobby Moore. I think Alf Ramsey said the same thing, and maybe Ron Greenwood. Everybody seems to have said he was kind of a strangely aloof character, right?
Yeah, Loof comes up a lot. Yeah, Ron Greenwood's quote is like, if you ask me to speak about Bobby Moore, the player, then I can speak for weeks. But if you ask me to speak about Bobby Moore, the man, I'll dry up after a minute. Yeah, this was a manager who knew him as man and boy, who was pretty much his only ever manager as a top level player. Yeah, didn't know the man at all. But I put it to you, Johnny, there wasn't much to know.
Yeah, this idea that, still waters run deep or whatever, maybe not. Maybe he's just a guy who loves football and didn't have much to say for himself. And he's very much drawn to much more outgoing people, your Greavesy. And maybe that is because he just wanted to be around that, but he didn't have. When you're so good at something, that in itself becomes your personality. So maybe he didn't have to fill in the blanks. And if he wasn't brilliant at football, maybe he just would have been a boring fucker.
Well, I think that's part of it. You know, it's like that thing. You never really meet really, really good looking stand up comedians because, really good looking people don't need to be funny because they're just good looking. And I feel that way a bit with Bobby Moore. He was just very handsome. He got these cute little dimples. Everyone thought he was lovely. And yeah, as he said, he just liked to stand at the end of a bar and watch other more charismatic people take over whilst he just stood there and got absolutely fucking hammered.
He was a mimbo, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I think that's a mimbo. Mimbo?
Himbo? Is it a mimbo? A man bimbo? Is it a himbo?
Oh, well, a himbo. Well, whatever you like. Yeah, a little bit, just a pretty headed thing. There's a lot more Jimmy Tarbuck in this book than I imagined, Johnny. There's a lot of Jimmy Tarbuck in here. Are you familiar with Jimmy Tarbuck?
The name. He's a kind of presumably not good looking comedian.
He really is not good looking, Johnny. Yeah, you can take that to the bank. I think you even admit that. Yeah. So yeah, he'd hang around a lot with more charismatic people. Jimmy Tarbuck, Kenny Lynch. There's so much Harry Redknapp in this book, and yeah, a lot of Jimmy Greaves,
Budgie Byrne.
Budgie Byrne. Oh, if only Bobby Moore had Budgie Byrne's character
Budgie is not a name I'd really like to have.
because he kept chirping.
But yeah, I think there is something to that, I think because he's such a legend and he was so good at football, as you say, he was handsome, people probably assumed person are kind of, like grafted personality onto him that maybe wasn't there. But this is what was interesting about the book. This in itself made the book interesting, I thought. That he was a bit of a boring old fucker.
Yeah, a bit boring. And again, like with all these footballers, just a massive, massive boozer, just a huge boozer. Could have achieved so much more, I think, if it wasn't for the demon drink.
Well, there's two things there with Moore. His international career was over at the age of 32, right? So he made his debut in the 62 World Cup, like a kind of a T.O. Walcott situation, brought to the World Cup unexpectedly to Chile. And in 66, he's captain at 25. But then by 74, at the age of 32, 33, I guess, that's it. His England career is over. So when you think about, not that everyone's career is necessarily always longer, but most top class footballers now go on for a lot longer, don't they? He could have played, like if he was playing now, he'd play a lot more just because he wouldn't have been drinking. But it was drinking, and he was a bit greedy, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, he loved the money. Absolutely loved the money.
It's funny because he wants money, but he really lacks ambition. He wants to stay in London, It's hard to understand the sensibilities of the time because there's a whole gentlemanly thing involved about not kind of pushing too hard for a move, but he desperately wanted to leave and he wanted more money. And it's almost, I think he wanted West Ham to push him out all the time. I think that's kind of how he felt, but he was too kind of, he was too mute to ever speak his mind. Also, that's why he drank, right? Because he was able to talk. He was able to come out of his shell a bit. That seems to have been the case.
Yeah, that's it. It's his passivity, is if such a word exists, that really does cost him a top-level football career. Because he would love to have gone to Spurs, apparently, which would have guaranteed you success in the 60s, but he didn't. I mean, his career at West Ham is astonishingly mediocre. Like, he won FA Cup in like 12, 13 years. That's what he had to show for it.
And won Cup Winners' Cup, is it?
Yeah, something like that. But man, those European tournaments were so devalued back then. Like, they really were silly.
Yeah, and like they were finishing. So around the time of the World Cup, they had Jeff Hurst, they had Martin Peters, 3 players in the starting 11 in the final and throughout the tournament, really. And they were young, and the West Ham were really expected to push on from there, and they never really did. And when Greaves went there later on, he was like, from Spurs, he said he was really surprised just by how mediocre everything was. And how
Well, Jimmy Greaves was amazed at the drinking culture at West Ham. That's not a good sign. No, going back to just having won the World Cup. Yeah, as you say, West Ham, the subsequent season, they had Martin Peters, Jeff Hurst, hat-trick hero, Bobby Moore, best defender in the world, allegedly. And yeah, West Ham finished 16th in the first
and 20th
division.
a couple of years later. And I was thinking, would that not have gotten them relegated? Was there, how many teams were in the league at the time? Like 45 or something? Like, how did that? It was 24.
Back in the day, wasn't it? 24. Wish I still was, mate.
Okay, let's get into the whole thing now. Mr. West Ham, middle name Chelsea. Bobby Chelsea Moore.
I didn't pick up on that. Bobby Chelsea Moore. Is that really his name? That is a really modern name, isn't it? You'd imagine like Jordan to have a kid called Bobby Chelsea.
His name is Robert Frederick Chelsea Moore. Yeah, born in 1941. Matt Dickinson says he wants to introduce us to the light and shade of the character. So I think he's done a good job there, really, because it's hard to write these books and have the character seem particularly to really know him that well. I guess you're kind of just drawing the outlines, but I think it did a decent job there.
Yeah, I think he took on. I think he says it himself, and it was very hard to write about a book about someone with so little hinterland. Like, I mean, you can describe his football, but he is an unknowable man. His opinions, they say like, oh, what's your favorite country? Oh, I like lots of countries. Best friend. Oh, I've got lots of friends.
Yeah, well, who's the hardest team to play against? They're all hard to play against. And the Dickinson says that's diplomacy. Is it?
Yeah, Dickinson says like he does actually answer what his favourite meal is, which is liver. Fucking hell, 60s. What a time to be alive. And he's like the author's like, I'm sure Bobby Moore would have been anxious about that, having offended pies or fish or something because he likes liver. Like,
what I enjoyed right from the start is that Moore is a weird, fastidious man and a fastidious boy. As a child, he would hang his shirts, never folding them, but hanging them from dark to light in order in his wardrobe. Do you remember? Do you remember in Peep Show when Mark Corrigan is walking down the street and some young street toughs call him clean shirt, and he's in his internal monologue he says, "Isn't it good that my shirt is clean?" Well, that's Bobby Moore, all clean shirt himself there. Tubby Moore as well. That was his nickname. He's a bit of a Harry Kane character in that he was a chubby younger man.
Yeah, that comes up. Yeah, Tubby or Fatso were his nicknames as a kid. Poor lad.
Yeah, you're talking about a fella's youth in the 40s and 50s. It's not that interesting. He was an only child. I think his parents were pretty straight-laced people, very kind of house proud and clean. That's about as exciting as the stuff about his youth gets, eh?
Yeah, it's not a very exciting childhood at all.
But right from the start, Al, he's drawn to this Malcolm Allison, who is he described as football's first kind of like superstar, but really gregarious, really charismatic, everything that Moore is not. And Allison, who is a player and a youth coach at West Ham and a football legend, I gather. I know the name, but I don't know much about him. And he kind of spots a young Moore and kind of takes him under his wing and more and takes him because they live near each other in Barking, and Moore is just charmed and taken by Allison because Allison is everything that Moore is not.
Well, Alison is an incredibly gregarious character, and obviously it's a name that comes up a lot in the books about 60s football. And I'm always like, oh, who is he again? And then I Google it and realize, oh, it's the bloke who wore the pimp hat and the pimp coat at Wembley. Like, that's what he's famous for, right? If you Google him, he's wearing like a weird pimp hat and pimp coat, looking very, very pleased for himself. And basically, that's all I know about Malcolm
He's
Allison.
like Joe Namath or something.
I mean, that's the way Google gets you nowadays, eh? Like, oh, let's just have a look at Malcolm Allison. The first picture that pops up is him looking pretty insane.
Oh yeah, look at that.
You know what I mean? What possessed him? It's like, oh, crikey.
But like he plays under Ron Greenwood, England under 21s, and then Greenwood goes to West Ham and is there for more or less all of all of Bobby Moore's career. And you said that Greenwood quote earlier, didn't you? But
Yeah,
the two of them really didn't like each other, did they?
not at all. Not at all. And in some funny ways, they seem very similar. You know, as much Ron Greenwood is a manager who's I suppose this is what we talk about the West Ham way. He's railing against the win at all costs attitude of English football at the time. He was more of a stylist. And you would have thought that was Bobby Moore as well, to be honest. But I think it's Bobby Moore's aloofness and then his boozing, which draws a wedge between him and Greenwood, right? They say Greenwood would have loved him to be his like voice in the dressing room and stuff. But as with all his managers, Bobby Moore is a little bit underhand snide to them, even when he's given their trust, which made me not like him a bit.
Yeah, and we'll get on to this stuff with Ramsey in a minute, but there was some really interesting stuff there, I thought. Actually, yeah, I didn't know anything about Alf Ramsey until this book, and he's a compelling enough weirdo, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, I didn't know. I didn't know about that either.
And we'll come to him in a minute, but yeah, Greenwood. I suppose you're hoping that that Corinthian spirit that Ron Greenwood brought to his time as West Ham manager. You're hoping that West Ham will continue that this season, maybe, Al.
Yeah, do it the right way, lads. Do it the right way by losing and not trying very hard.
Ron Greenwood moved Bobby Moore to centre half. He was playing as a fullback before then, but Bobby Moore was really one paced. But the thing that he did have was incredible composure, and he read the game extremely well. And this is the thing that you hear over and over in this book. You wonder sometimes in these books, Matt Dickinson, as I say, he wants to kind of he wants to tell us about who Moore is as a person as much as a footballer. But then sometimes you feel like he really dives on every positive thing that anyone ever said about Moore as a player. Like he's quoting Pele saying effectively that Moore was the best and the most gentlemanly that he ever played against. And then you wonder, are you just kind of getting one side of the story when you hear that stuff, I think.
I mean, we know Pele, right? Pele will have said that about a player from every single team he ever played against in the history of his game. He would have said that every time. I don't think you can take anything that Pele says overly seriously.
Yeah, that is funny.
He read the game well, but as you say, one paced, and also, by all accounts, he could not head the ball at all. So that's a good centre back, isn't it? Like, what's your new centre back? Got a new one. Is he any good? He's really slow and he can't head the ball. Ooh, blimey. But he can read the game. Oh, that's frightening to me.
Can you think of a modern equivalent? Slow, can't head, can read the game.
Max Kilman at West Ham. He's fucking slow. I know that much.
Yeah. And yeah, but Greenwood was kind of a tactical kind of he was innovative, I suppose, tactically. And he, as I say, moved more to centre half. He also moved Jeff Hurst. Jeff Hurst was kind of a jobbing midfielder, and he moved him up front. And he brought them to the FA Cup victory. Was it in 1964? You can kind of give the West Ham stuff in 2 sentences. They were okay. They won a couple of things, and then they just kind of plodded along forever after that. You can kind of put West Ham to side for the rest of his career, where he left in 1973, 74. And that was it. They just kind of muddled along. And they got drunk all of the fucking time. There's one story where some young fella comes along and he's signing for West Ham and he's a bit nervous. And they're down the pub on the booze. Win or lose on the booze is their club motto when Bobby Moore's at West Ham. And the young fella says, I'm a bit nervous that I won't make the grade at West Ham. He says, can you put your foot against this rail, the bar rail? Is it called a rail, the thing on the ground?
Yep.
Can you rest your elbow against this bar? Yeah. Can you hold that point? Yeah. Well, you'll make the grade. So if that is really what the fucking outlook was. And that's coming from post 1966 World Cup hero Bobby Moore. Isn't that remarkable?
Yeah, he didn't ever try to better himself, did he? He never tried to improve. He was happy with his lot.
But
anyway, should we move on to the England stuff?
Yeah, the England stuff is interesting. So I wanted to talk about Ramsey. So the thing that Moore said snidely about Ramsey is from a gypsy background. He's from Dagenham. Yeah, he's from Dagenham. So he's a working class fellow, but he has this fake, posh, regal voice, like a kind of Sergeant Major voice. That's totally a total confection. But they were in the Balkans at one point and they passed, like the caravan site. And Bobby Moore said to someone, maybe Alf should drop into his relatives. And Ramsey heard this and he was obviously pretty pissed off about this. But that's what you're saying, that he was quite snide kind of character in a way. I found Ramsey very interesting. It's like, oh, hello, come on. And the fella, by the way, Al, the fella who does the audiobook, and as you know, I've listened to a lot of these in audio, he does a voice for everyone who comes up in the book. And I've never had that before.
Oh, that's fabulous. You got a different voice for every character.
Yeah, so like Clough, Ramsey, Bobby Charlton is some and sometimes like there's, if an Irish person would show up and it's just like standard Irish voice, but some of them would be more kind of familiar. Like the Clough one was reasonably, the nasal kind of whatever it is, northern accent. But that was it. So for Ramsey, it was very much whatever, something you'd expect from what's a posh English TV show.
Keeping Up Appearances. Downton Abbey. Oh, you can't overstress the class warfare back in the day. Both my mum and dad, you should have heard my mum answer the phone. Like, her dad worked in a shoe shop, but when she's on the phone, hello, Bond residents. It's like, all right, Hyacinth, okay, you're not posh. You're not. Leave it out. Hello, how can I help you? Yeah, that was really a thing. People were absolutely horrified by their accents of the day. People are much more proud of their accents now. No one wants to sound like a posh fucker.
But they're saying the people think that Ramsey got elocution lessons, which is incredible, if it's true.
Yeah, to be a football manager wouldn't happen now, would it? Oh, Sean Dyche at the side, like that's why he failed at Forest. Didn't sound posh enough, like.
Is there any posh people in football? Like, can you name one other than fake posh Alf Ramsey?
Callum Hudson-Odoi went to private school. So did Frank Lampard.
Yeah, but
Junior.
Yeah, his dad shows up in this book. He's part of the Moore clique.
Yeah, so he makes his debut for England at Chile in 1962. Now, the England football team were up to hijinks. They were playing with a plastic spider and itching powder. What were the Brazilian team doing in 1962 in Santiago in Chile? They're out banging hookers, not the England team. Itching powder fun. Straight out of the Beano. Innocent, sweet England.
But he's boozing from the start. And in the lead up to 66, he's really boozing. And him and Greaves are real, the right duo here in the boozing sense. But Ramsey does a pretty interesting thing. They go somewhere, I can't remember where it was, and 6 of them go out drinking and they come back very late. And when they come back, they find their passports on their pillow. Oh, hello, that's pretty spicy. And Ramsey doesn't say anything to them for 48 hours. I thought that was really good. Nice little bit of psychological warfare, really fucking with their minds. Yeah,
he was dropped before the World Cup as well, Bobby Moore, for a spell. So
Yeah.
wasn't absolutely set on, and he had Norman Hunter behind him, so like a pretty decent centre back by all accounts.
Yeah, and there was an ultimatum on his drinking. Ramsey apparently took him aside in Belfast and said, he needed him to be his captain, essentially. Here's a nice picture. Bobby Moore and Jimmy Greaves sneaking out of the Waldorf Astoria to see Ella Fitzgerald in New York. That's pretty nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
But anyway, okay, 66. That's the main bit of Moore's life, I suppose. And yeah, Brazil have a nightmare. Pele is injured. England win.
Yeah, man, we all know England win. Bobby Moore on the shoulders, lovely dimples, looking cute, shaking hands with a queen. Boom.
I thought
Well done.
what was interesting was that he was in one of his many disputes at West Ham over his contract, and he was holding out for more money, and he hadn't signed a contract. West Ham were holding his registration, so you can't move as a free agent even if you're out of contract, and he couldn't play for England if he didn't have a contract with West Ham. So Ramsey allowed Greenwood to come along and gave them a few minutes, so Bobby Moore could sign a 1-month contract with West Ham in order to play for England in the World Cup. I thought that was interesting enough.
Yeah, it was, and it worked out well for Bobby Moore because obviously he signs his contract, then wins the World Cup, and at that point, West Ham can't let him go and have to like buckle to his demands for money.
But then that was really the moment he should have left, wasn't it?
Oh, he absolutely should have left them because his career goes nowhere after that. Oh, just as an aside, we've not mentioned his wife, Tina. So these guys were kind of like the first. She was like kind of the first wag Dickinson talks about. She was very prominent. It was always Bobby and Tina. There was like a sexy photo shoot where she was wearing an England shirt, a long England shirt. We're in the woods, and she actually really looks quite glamorous. They even did some adverts together, Johnny, for about going to the pub. Do you see this advert?
As for the pub, just generally the pub, like milk.
Yep. Tina's at the pub. She's going, oh, sometimes I'll wait for Bobby in a pub. And then Bobby walks in. She's playing darts. And then Bobby's like, yeah, me and Tina like, I don't know, I'm doing it in a northern accent. Me and Tina like to go down the pub after a game. And then he grabs a dart off Tina, slings it at the board. Bullseye! Boom! It is very, very wooden. Very, very wooden. It wouldn't particularly encourage me to go down to a pub.
Then the tagline at the end is just the pub.
Isn't the pub great? But yeah, he has this glamour puss wife, which he met at the Ilford Palais over 60s. And she plays a huge role in the book. She's always piping up. I mean, later on, she basically does all of his business dealings, and they don't go well. Oh, spoiler alert.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, it comes up around this time as well. Alex Ferguson says that well done are the two best words in the English language. And he says they're the best thing that a player can hear. And Moore apparently had a real beef because Greenwood would never tell him well done and used to moan about this. But apparently Bobby Moore would never say well done either because he was such a miserable old fucker.
Yeah, never celebrated goals. He said once in his whole career would he even congratulated a teammate once for scoring a goal, and that was with a handshake.
Well, Jeff Hurst said one time he said to him, "You were great today," and Jeff Hurst said he remembered it precisely because it's the only time he ever said anything positive to him. I would really struggle with that now, and I think people like that, I want to impress them. People who withhold like that. That really.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true. I think that is some psychology. I'm not sure he was aware of that psychology. I think he probably was just a very aloof man, but I can see how that would be a motivator.
If you were brilliant at football and you just never said anything positive, that would encourage you. But if you were just a normal person,
it's like one of Paul Hollywood's handshakes in Bake Off, like they don't come along very well, but when you get one, oh baby.
There was a whole series of things I didn't understand.
Nor do you need to. Just one more thing about the World Cup final. It says an unnecessary drive-by by the author Matt Dickinson on Martin Peters, who he points out, and he doesn't have to, that Martin Peters' mum and dad watched the World Cup final from at home because Martin Peters sold all his ticket allocations and didn't give any to his mum and dad. That didn't need to be in there. Just a little bit of a snide thing about Martin Peters. He'd regret it later. I bet he would.
I've never really paid a whole pile of attention to the 66 stuff, even though it looms quite large, I guess, in the English football conscience. But I've never actually seen any of it apart from the very famous goals. The author says he reckons it's the most replayed goal ever. Do you think that's true? What about Maradona in '86?
Yeah, it's the most replayed goal in England, maybe. But yeah, I think people sometimes lose perspective that football is a global game. Just because you've rewound and watched that bloody goal a million times, Matt Dickinson, doesn't mean some kid in Buenos Aires has. Like, no.
What would you think of there? Like, some fucking Messi goal or something,
The most watched goal in football history, John.
I'm sure you can find out what the most watched goal on YouTube is. So, according to ChatGPT, Lionel Messi's 2017 winning goal versus Real Madrid is the most watched goal with more than 40 million views. Then it's got Roberto Carlos versus France, that free kick. David Beckham versus Greece, and Maradona versus England. Anyway, okay. I thought the stuff about 70 was just way more interesting because I know less about it. Even less.
Yeah, the 66 stuff, that's all in the canon now, right? Yeah, so 70 is much more interesting. And this is where something actually quite interesting's happened. So between 66 and 1970, Bobby Moore basically does absolutely fuck all football-wise, right? Just Spurs, just West Ham just pootle along, not getting relegated, not winning anything. But then we get to 1970, Mexico World Cup, lovely stuff. England go to Colombia. They are preparing diligently. They have a month in Colombia to acclimatize.
Bring their own bus.
Bring their own bus, yeah. But, so here we are, the most famous thing about Bobby Moore. The hotel we're staying in, there's a little jewellery shop in the foyer. Bobby Moore bowls in with, of all people, Bobby Charlton, two Bobbies.
Two Bobbies walk into a jewellery store. Carry on.
And he's accused of stealing a gold bracelet encrusted with diamonds and emeralds with a value of £650 at the time, which must be tens of thousands of pounds now. He is arrested on the say-so of the shop girl, someone else, and basically a criminal on the street.
A local street tough who saw it through the window. And he showed up a bit later in the story as well. He wasn't there at the beginning. Suddenly they found the witness on the street. Oh, I happened to see that, actually.
Yes, the shop girl says she saw him slip it into his left pocket. He later proved that he had no left pocket in his suit. Now, he was held in custody for a few days in Colombia. It took forever to litigate eventually. It was still going on months and months after the World Cup. Did he steal the bracelet, Johnny?
I think it's I don't think he stole the bracelet, but I think it's conceivable that one of his buddies, like Bobby Charlton, that always up to hijinks, slipped it into a pocket as a joke. But I think it's probably more likely that it was a scam. I think that's more likely. What do you reckon?
Yeah, that's it. I couldn't absolutely guarantee he didn't nick it because he does have that sort of flippant nature about him. They didn't take seriously the laws in Colombia very seriously. I think they're probably fairly aloof to that. I don't think he did steal it, but it's a possibility. I wouldn't totally rule it out. Anyway, so the long and short of this is the press get wind of it. It's a huge story. He's held in custody in Colombia, but not in a prison, in like some fancy place.
He stays in effectively a judge's house under house arrest.
Right. He says the armed guards. Apparently, he was very, very unflappable all the way through. But bottom line, he gets to the World Cup in time. He's 4 days before the first game. Yeah, I don't know. It was I get it. It was a huge story. I get it. If, I don't know, Harry Kane was accused and arrested in America in the next World Cup, that would be a big story. But it's kind of a non-event now, right? He turned up, he played.
Well, players being arrested at the World Cup next year is not that inconceivable.
No, it's not, Johnny. No, it's not.
But yeah, and you could see how that could have a really galvanizing effect on. He was captain as well, so you can see how it could go either way, right? It could have a real galvanizing effect on the team, or it could really, whatever, mess up their whole preparations. But you can, and the whole time there was a bunch of journalists with them in Colombia, and none of them got wind of it, which was pretty funny.
Yeah, they only got wind of it when they were getting off a plane and they didn't have time to file the copy, right?
Can you imagine the editor in London is like, "Did you get that story?" He's like, "Go on, tell me which story is that?" "Yeah, you fucking asshole! You've been there for the last fucking 3 weeks." You know what I mean?
Anyway, just as a nice coda to this story, so Bobby Moore ends up in the British Embassy in Mexico. Who should bowl in but Jimmy Greaves? What had Jimmy Greaves just completed?
Yeah, like a race.
The London to Mexico rally. Of course he had. Jimmy Greaves, he did that. He was a co-pilot, a navigator,
Navigator, yeah.
and they finished fourth.
Yeah.
Unbelievable, Jimmy Greaves. Everyone lost their mind when AVB did that London to Dakar, Paris to Dakar rally, right?
Yeah, yeah. So Greavesy was there first. But by the way, just back to the bracelet thing. The other thing was he had been arrested and released, and they flew to Ecuador, and then they were flying to Mexico for the World Cup, and they were stopping off in Colombia. And someone said, "Should we divert the plane just in case that more thing happens again?" They're like, "Nah, it's totally fine." And then they landed in Colombia, and only for the intervention of the embassy, the British ambassador, they were going to arrest him on the plane. So they could have just like went somewhere in a different direction and avoided the whole thing. Whoops.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, the author points out there is one man who's dedicated his whole life to trying to find out if Bobby Moore did steal this bracelet.
Oh,
And
God.
he never did find out. What a good gift to the life. Well done. Well done, that bloke.
But then the other thing that the World Cup in '70 is famous for is Peter Benetti.
Yeah, Peter Benetti. And you thought it was just because he was a shit keeper, but he was actually shit because he thought his wife was out shagging. So,
And he's yeah. So you said that Tina was the first wag. So some newspaper paid for 4 wives to be there, and this was a big thing. And Tina Moore was one of them. But Peter Benetti's missus was there as well, and apparently he was a nervous wreck.
because all the players were telling him his missus was out banging everybody. That's why he was so bad in goal. Well, they've only themselves to blame, haven't they? Like, yeah, they should have foreseen that Gordon Banks would be injured and that Peter Benetti would be forced into play, and they shouldn't have worried him about his wife's.
And apparently he was openly nervous and kind of didn't want to play. That's not very encouraging. Aren't you a professional goalkeeper? Why are you in the squad, Mr. Benetti? He was a Chelsea keeper at the time.
Yeah, the cat.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And then, okay, they get knocked out of the World Cup. That Bobby Moore tackle that's in the song against Brazil. Is it against Brazil?
I mean, this is it, Johnny. I mean, it's a tackle. Yeah, it's a tackle against Pele. Good tackle. Good tackle. There you go. One good tackle. I don't know. And this has been blown up into this like Mount Rushmore of a footballer. Great tackle. Good tackle. Yep. I'll show you a good tackle from 100 games in a game of football. All right, not against Pele, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, there was some fun stuff. There was a kidnapping threat. There was some death threats, and every now and again, Bobby Moore had a good line. Himself and his missus. Apparently, he was very quiet, and she was a feisty character, and she would shout at him when they're out and about, and he would always be saying like, not in front of other people. And one day she threw a gin and tonic in his face, and he tapped it and he tasted it and said, "Could do with a bit more tonic, love."
Well, that would have annoyed a feisty character. I think anyone who describes himself as feisty about 4 or 5 times in this book, as Tina Moore does, that it doesn't mean feisty, does it? It just means like really shrill and annoying. Like, oh, I'm a feisty character. See, if you met someone and say, I'm a feisty character, like,
Yeah.
thanks. I tell her how it is. No, don't do that.
But that's it, really, isn't it? They didn't win the World Cup, and they were kind of fancied. And England really went into the footballing wilderness for the next 15 years, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we were poor after that. Absolutely poor. Racked with insecurities. So this is, so after this, again, Moore poddles on for another 2 or 3 years at West Ham, not doing much.
Yeah, and here, as is often the case with these books, it kind of peters out. There's nothing really to report. Himself and Greenwood just are together forever, even though they never fucking well like each other. And he had tried to go to Spurs, that didn't happen, and eventually he went to Fulham. And he was there with George Best and Rodney Marsh. That's kind of interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a Rodney Marsh. He's like, oh, you should have seen it down there. We had George Best pulling the crumpet, and there was old Bobby with a wide smile covered by crumpet. A lot of crumpet in this book.
Do you think this is true? The author said that there was one incident where Rodney Marsh and George Best were tackling each other for the ball, playing for the same team.
Yeah, this was not a serious football team, this Fulham football team. This was just larks and fun. And he went down to the second division. This was in the second division, by the way. Like Bobby Moore just, I don't want to move away from London, and
Yeah,
they
so-
will let me drink as much as I want to at Fulham because there's George Best. Yeah, I'll go there.
Yeah, Alan Mullery is his buddy, and he's the one who kind of entices him there. And he goes to America, Al, and he plays for a team called Thunder and a team called Lightning.
I didn't notice that. Very nice.
He also went to Hong Kong.
It's really not used to Hong Kong.
Hong Kong, and well, he signed for a Hong Kong team according to his Wikipedia page, and he played in Denmark for like 9 games.
Oh, the Denmark thing is just tragic. He played in the bottom division in Denmark for a £14,000 a year because nobody else wanted him.
Mm.
That's it. This is what I mean. Like, he has this status back home, but there's no way Franz Beckenbauer would have ended up playing for a third division Danish side. Just no way. Just
But
no way.
It's because Bobby Moore didn't have Robert Schwan, and he had the opportunity in '66. This company IMG, who were making footballers kind of brands, they came to Bobby Moore, but the deal was they would get 50% of all of your earnings. Now Bobby Moore is being paid a princely sum by footballing standards in England at the time of whatever it was, £150. But this guy was getting people like, Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer and making them like household names. So whatever he was getting from West Ham wouldn't have really mattered if he had gone with this guy at the time. The guy would have made him really big and really rich.
Yeah, so IMG, there's still a huge name in sports representation. Yeah, so exactly. So these are the names that they had. Arnold Palmer. I mean, you can literally buy Arnold Palmer juice at the supermarket right now in America. Like an Arnold Palmer is tea and lemonade.
Al, I remember hearing about 10 years ago that the top 5 earning golfers in the world were Tiger Woods, someone else I can't remember who was like playing at the time, Rory McIlroy, and then it was Arnold Palmer and Jack Nicklaus. Like 20 or 30 years after they'd stopped,
Yep. Bjorn Borg, huge name, still selling underwear. Yep. Franz Beckenbauer and Pele, but no, he didn't want to give up 15% of his earnings. Instead, well, this is he's described as by Jimmy Tarbuck as the worst businessman in the whole world. And this is the tragedy of the end of his career, because he was someone who was always like trying to save money and put money away. But towards the end of his career, he goes into the the luxury country club business. This sounds like a good idea, doesn't it? And he goes into the luxury country club business with no less than Sean fucking Connery. Sean Connery, who at one point, by the way, Alf Ramsey calls Sean Connery. And Bobby Moore says, now I've seen it all. And that's another black mark against Bobby Moore from Alf Ramsey. So, yeah, he invested in this place called Woolston Hall, which is going to be a country club. And it's very conveniently close to Bobby Moore's house. So he thinks he's just going to pop along to his country club every day, rake up his, count his money and like get a manicure and a massage. But no.
It's like Moore's Mar-a-Lago. Do you know who's trying to do a similar thing in England at the moment? Liz Truss. She's trying to set up some high-end private members club in London, or she has set one up.
Oh, well, I mean, imagine if you can hang around for so. I'm going to join just so I could meet Liz Truss, maybe. Can you imagine? Well done, her. Anyway, so yeah, he sets up this Woolston Hall with Sean Connery, and somehow he doesn't sign the contract properly, so he is eligible for all the debts. Well done, Bobby. They import flamingos into the pool. It's so 60s. All the cutlery is like sterling silver. I bought a swimming pool from a swimming. What's he saying? The thing? What do you call it? A bouncy. What do you call it? Diving board for a swimming pool from America. They're called bouncy. And yeah, everything was a disaster. All the silver was stolen. The flamingos were killed by foxes. The diving board wasn't regulation. He loses everything on this stupid country club he set up.
I can't.
But does he think to himself, "Mm, what could I do better?" No, he invests in pubs. Of course he does. Pubs, like down the East End, like lots of boozers. But he doesn't want to run them. He always tells his wife, Tina, you do it, you do it. No. Just when he was going to sign with IMG, rather than signing with IMG to become one of the biggest global sports brands on the planet, he decides, no, I'm going to get into the old leather coat business instead. That's where fortunes are made, Johnny, isn't it? Leather coats. That's the one.
Yeah, Jerry Seinfeld's dad.
Everything that could go wrong goes wrong. He's like, oh, we're going to make leather coats. We're going to make them in Cyprus. Just as Turkey invade, like, he loses all his money. He buys boozers. They get burned down by shady East End people.
Oh.
Everything he does is wrong. Everything he does is wrong. And because, of course, he's always in this haze of alcohol, he doesn't know. He sends his missus out to deal with it because he won't deal with it because he's so bloody passive. And he loses everything. He has nothing. They have to sell their holiday home in Marbella. They managed to keep hold of the house, which they had built at ludicrous expense, and is hideous, by the way, the house they built.
That's not what
Yeah.
that's not what the author says. It's one of the most tasteful houses on whatever it's called, Millionaire Row in Chigwell or whatever.
The most tasteful house on Millionaire's Row in Chigwell. So now he's desperate. He's really desperate. So he's like, oh, management. That's for me now. I've tried being a third division footballer in Denmark. That's not worked out. Management. And again, he is not cut out for management at all.
You might have to say something, Bobby.
Oh, you'd have to like fall out with people. So I'm not sure the chronology of this, but so at one point, Elton John, he's bought Watford, and he's like, who could I get to be a manager? Bobby Moore, England captain. Brilliant. I mean, as a pop star, I guess that's what you would think. But like, so he contacts Bobby Moore and he tells him he's going to be earning like £14,000 a year in the third division, which is huge money down there. But then other people from Watford are like talking to Mr. John, maybe he's not the best choice because he definitely wouldn't be. He's a terrible football manager. So, yeah, that disappears. Bobby Moore learns through the newspaper that, in fact, Graham Taylor is going to be manager of Watford, and I don't think anybody could argue with that appointment. He's gutted. Then he gets a job at Oxford City, not Oxford United, Oxford City. Some man's persuaded Oxford can sustain 2 professional football teams. Well, of course he can. And he goes there, but he's absolutely useless. And he brings along Harry Redknapp, and apparently Harry Redknapp does everything. And there's a point where he's like, Harry Redknapp's at Oxford City, and he's like, how the fuck did I get here? But more to the point, how the fuck did he get here? Like, he's won the World Cup. Like, yeah. And there's a weird thing there that when he was at Oxford City, one of his friends put in a word for him, and he gets offered the Norwich job in the first division. But he tells them, no, I've committed to Oxford City now, so I can't. So I think that really does display he had no faith in his own abilities whatsoever.
He would have been under the spotlight there, I think.
Yeah, when he's at Oxford City, he has to fuck off for 6 weeks to go to film Escape to Victory. One of the few high points of him in the 70s. Yeah, here we go. He gets let go from there though, because Oxford City are terrible. I think they get relegated. I mean, it's so bad. So then he leans on his celebrity friends, Kenny Lynch and Jimmy Tarbuck, put in a word for him at Southampton with Laurie McMenemy. Oh, can you give him assistant manager? No, I don't want him. He gets a job at Southend. So that's a proper football team. Well done. Good. Then doesn't turn up before a game. And when he does turn up, he's drunk. Oh, mate. By this time, he's got his second DUI, which, just as a fun fact, he got in Stamford, where I went to college. So good. And then, so yeah, he's absolutely useless, man. I mean, even when he has a job, he turns up drunk. And then in the most 70s move ever, he falls in love with an air hostess. Oh, yeah. That's what rich men did in the 70s, right? 70s, 80s. They just went on a plane, fell in love with an air hostess and left their wives. All of them, right? That's what they all did. Wild.
By the way, on the DOA thing, he got one in the 60s when he was playing for England, but he used to wear a chauffeur's hat. Because apparently policemen wouldn't stop someone if they thought they were driving for a living.
Well, policemen aren't going to stop you unless you're swerving all over the fucking road. Well, this man appears to be driving dangerously, but he is wearing a cap, so we'll give him the benefit of the doubt there. Yeah, so he leaves his wife of 20 years for Stephanie, his new air hostess. Michael Parkinson weighs in with a drive-by on his ex-wife Tina and said, in fact, that Stephanie opened some doors and gave him some more cultural knowledge, which Tina failed to do. And with that cultural knowledge, Bobby Moore takes a job at the Sunday Sport in what is just the most depressing end to a life I could think of. Like, oh man, the England World Cup winning captain, head of sports at the Sunday Sport. Oh, it's depressing. But you know, David Sullivan only had nice words for him. And nice words from David Sullivan are like bad words from anyone else. If David Sullivan's speaking well about you, that's a bad thing. Yeah, so he lived a life very much of his time, Johnny. He did. It was just booze, crumpet, air hostesses, passivity. One World Cup.
He dies of cancer in 1993. But what I didn't know is I guess nobody knew, he had cancer in the 60s. Even before they won the World Cup, he had testicular cancer and he had a testicle removed. But obviously the cancer came back later in life. And they don't know. They think that maybe the way it was treated at the time might have actually caused whatever had some effect on cells, which out of my depth here, but influenced the later cancer, you know. He had testicular cancer, which was apparently visible in the showers, and no one ever kind of mentioned to him, and he was just too stoic and too, I guess, ashamed at the time to do it, to acknowledge it for a long time, to do anything about it. But that was cured or treated. But then, he died in 1993. And when he got cancer and he was dying, he just didn't tell anyone. And he called all of his friends towards the end of his life when he knew time was up, and they didn't really know why he was calling. He just had a normal conversation with them. And Jeff Hurst, who said he didn't really understand why Moore was ringing him up, because they didn't really have that kind of friendship. He said he only kind of realized later that he was ringing him to say goodbye.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it's a real sad end, because at the end, he wasn't even welcome at West Ham anymore. Like, he didn't get complimentary tickets. He had to buy a ticket if he went to West Ham. He vowed never ever to return.
He could have bought some off Martin Peters, no?
He could, really. He should have been above that. Yeah, so there's a lot of recriminations there, and West Ham are trying now to make it up to him, but it's too late. West Ham, he's dead.
And of all these huge footballing figures that we've read about, Maradona, Pele, okay, Garrincha is a bit more obscure for us, but given his profile, I really knew nothing about Bobby Moore, so a lot of this was a surprise to me.
Well, that's it. I didn't know much about Bobby Moore, but kind of I did know everything. You know what I mean? Because there wasn't really much to know. He was quite good at football, but I stand by that, Johnny. Quite good at football. He was an 8 out of 10 footballer, I think. He was not a 10. And
that's not what Matt Dickinson says.
Well, Matt Dickinson's got to write a book about him, hasn't he? But yeah, couldn't head, one paced.
Yeah, he did a move towards the end of his career, which sounded very much like my football play. Slow and predictable, I think, is what this famous slip he had for England against Poland when they were trying to qualify for 74. What did you think of this book?
I mean, I think Matt Dickinson did what he could with the source material, because ultimately Bobby Moore wasn't a very interesting character. He lived an interesting life because of his status as a professional footballer, But he wasn't a very interesting character at all. I mean, how do you know someone who is unknowable? Yeah, it's
Yeah.
fine. What did you think of this book?
Well, I thought the book was good actually, precisely because I didn't know anything about him. And there's characters that haven't. There's a lot of people who have come up, but then there's other characters. Like Jimmy Greaves seems like an interesting enough character. There's a few people that pop up that are kind of fun, and I did enjoy it. I thought it was a decent book, and I'm going to go ahead of you, Al, and say I'm going to give it 3.5.
I'm going to give it 3. It was fine.
It's a rare day on the Dynamo Football Book Club where I've given the book a higher mark than you.
Yeah, I'm a little bit disappointed with him, to be honest. There just wasn't much there.
See, I think there was stuff there, but it's what you said, though. It's because he lived an interesting life, not that he was an interesting person. The stuff about what is it? Gordon Ramsay every time. Alf Ramsey was interesting. Some of the stuff about Ron Green was interesting, only because I kind of know that he's got a big profile or a big reputation. Some of that stuff was interesting, and the stuff about the bracelet in 1970, I did find actually very interesting. So some of it I enjoyed, and the fact that he was such a strange character, a strange unknowable man, kind of in itself was interesting.
Yeah. I think his reputation's been so completely overinflated back home that it's very difficult to have a rational thought of where he stands in the pantheon of great footballers. For me, he's like remember Matthias Sammer, 1996. Remember, he was a wonderful defender, won the Euros with Germany.
Dickinson compares. He says he's the only player he can think of that's similar to Moore.
But nowadays, largely forgotten, right? And I'm sure Matthias Sammer's a big name in Germany, but internationally probably doesn't have a reputation. I can only imagine internationally people don't know who Bobby Moore is.
Do you reckon? That's interesting. Yeah.
I think you get some football crazed kid in Brazil right now, right? They know who Maradona is, they know who Beckenbauer is. I bet they don't know who Bobby Moore is any more than they know who this centre half for Uruguay was in 1962 or something.
But anyway, okay, Al, I enjoyed it. You didn't love it. Okay, tell me what's next, because I can't remember.
Yes, so next week we are doing The Greatest Show on Earth, Mexico 1970 by Andrew Downey. Have we done an Andrew Downey book before? I feel that we have.
He did the Socrates book.
Oh, fabulous. All right, excellent.
Okay, and next week the draft and then that book. Okay, super, Al, that's wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you, folks, for listening. Please give us a rating and a nice old comment, if you could.
Yeah, be more generous with your ratings than we are about the books.
Bobby Moore led England up to the Royal Box to receive the Jules Rimet Cup and the winners' medals. To be here as winners of the FA Cup has often been described as the summit of a footballer's ambition. How much greater was the triumph they enjoyed now.
Last question. Thank you very much indeed.